let's just go ahead and dismantle the comforting lie that elite performers are simply naturally smarter than everyone else. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the fascinating psychology and the literal neurological mechanics behind high achievers. We look at the A student, the top-tier surgeon, or that relentlessly consistent entrepreneur, and we just assume, right? We assume that we're gifted with some incredible biological advantage. But as we pull from our source material today, you're going to see that talent is basically just a story that weak systems tell themselves. So we're going to break down the exact blueprint of how your brain actually learns, how to build unbreakable consistency, and crucially, how to make sure you're actually pointing all these skills in the right direction. Let's get into it.
It's a pretty profound question to start with, isn't it? Why do some people quietly achieve their goals while others constantly struggle? Look, we've all been there. You set a goal, you picture this amazing future version of yourself, you start out incredibly strong, and then you just kind of hesitate. You tell yourself, I'll restart tomorrow. And when that happens, we almost always blame a lack of motivation or discipline. But today, we're exploring how high achievers completely bypass the need for endless motivation and raw talent by using something way more reliable. They aren't relying on being braver or more inspired than you. Instead, they operate on a totally different psychological framework.
Just look at the clear contrast here between how amateurs and elite performers operate. Amateurs, they wait for the right feeling. They study or work when the fear finally kicks in, or when a random burst of motivation strikes. But think about it. Motivation is tied entirely to your emotional state, which fluctuates literally every single day. Elite performers, on the other hand, they build a system that makes failure almost impossible. They rely on structure and they rely on identity. When your actions are tied to your identity, like genuinely believing, I'm the kind of person who handles this early, you completely stop negotiating with your mood. You're no longer trying to become someone. You're simply acting as that someone. It's a huge shift.
Section 1. The mechanics of memory, how the brain actually learns.
Okay, so knowing we need a system is great, but what exactly does an effective system actually look like on a neurological level? Let's take a highly demanding profession, like surgeons. Surgeons are not born with photographic memories. Seriously, they have the exact same working memory limits as you and I, but they have to memorize massive amounts of life-or-death data without succumbing to cognitive overload. So here is the exact 5-step system they use. First, they compress data, which is also known as chunking. They don't memorize 15 isolated symptoms. They compress them into one recognizable pattern or diagnosis. Second, they use active recall. Third, they literally treat sleep as the ultimate save button, because that's where memory consolidation actually happens. Fourth, they use spaced repetition to battle the brain's natural forgetting curve. And fifth, they engage in deliberate practice. They isolate their absolute weakest points rather than just redoing what they're already good at. You see, amateurs practice what they're good at because it feels productive. Experts drill what they're bad at to actually grow.
Let's really zoom in on that second step for a second, because it completely changes how we should be viewing studying. Active recall. It's retrieving information from memory instead of passively reviewing it. So the absolute crucial point here is avoiding the illusion of competence you get from just rereading your notes or indiscriminately highlighting a textbook. When you reread, the text feels familiar, right? So your brain tricks you into thinking you actually know it. But here's the reality check. Recognition is not memory. You literally have to close the book and test yourself. When you struggle to remember, yeah, it feels uncomfortable. But that discomfort, that is the literal biological signal that a neural pathway is being strengthened and that true learning is actually happening.
Now, to sustain that kind of uncomfortable, high-level brain activity, you have to have boundaries. And that brings us to the magic number 25. By using the Pomodoro technique to study in 25-minute focused intervals, followed immediately by a 5-minute break, you protect your brain from fatigue and maintain peak concentration. Listen, your brain simply cannot handle active recall for 3 hours straight without degrading. It's impossible. These forced breaks allow your cognitive resources to recover, making sustained, high-quality focus a repeatable system rather than just an exhausting marathon.
And during those 25 minutes, you can deploy specific tactical tools to force your brain to actively organize and retrieve knowledge. It's like having an elite study arsenal. You can use blurting, which is just writing down everything you know on a completely blank page to instantly expose your weak spots. Or the Feynman Technique, where you explain a really complex concept in super simple language, like you're teaching someone else. The SQ3R method turns passive reading into an active search for answers. Interleaving forces your brain to alternate between different but related topics, which is amazing for improving problem solving. And the Lightner system automates your flashcards so you spend the most time on the concepts you actually get wrong. Every single one of these tools prioritizes retrieval over passive reading. That's the secret sauce.
But, and this is a big but,
all that active retrieval won't stick if you don't time it right. Look at this number right here, 15. Because of the biological forgetting curve, which is a physical reality where your brain just rapidly discards new information, 15 minutes of spaced repetition daily completely beats 5 hours of panic cramming right before an exam. Spaced repetition means reviewing information at increasing intervals, so 1 day, then 3 days, then a week, right at the exact moment you're about to forget it. That tiny little moment of struggle to remember, that's what signals your brain to move the information into long-term storage. So the takeaway? You really don't need more study time, you just need much better spacing.
Section 2. Systems always beat motivation. The psychology of consistency.
Okay, so knowing how to study is only half the battle. Now we need to look at the psychology of actually executing these methods day in and day out. Because it's one thing to know about active recall and the Pomodoro technique, it's an entirely different beast to actually sit down at your desk and do it when you're feeling tired, bored, or stressed. Right? So how do the overachievers consistently get themselves to execute? Well, it comes down to this. Discipline isn't strength, it's structure. We look at highly productive people and we assume they possess this unbreakable iron will. But they really don't wake up feeling motivated every single day. They simply wake up committed to a structured system that actively removes decision fatigue. They study at the exact same time, using the exact same process, completely regardless of their mood. Because the more decisions you have to make in a day, like, should I study now or later, or what should I even focus on, the faster you drain your willpower and inevitably end up quitting.
In real time, this mindset creates a massive behavioral shift. Average students wait for the pressure of fear to force them into action. They basically borrow stress from tomorrow to get things done today. And they often confuse being busy, like aggressively highlighting an entire chapter, with actual tangible progress. Overachievers, however, trade that panic for calm, specifically because they tie their actions to their identity. They study before the fear even exists. By acting in alignment with who they believe they are, someone who handles things early, they protect their mind from the paralysis of pressure. Let me tell you, calm is a massive competitive advantage.
If you want to actually achieve your goals, you have to realize that consistency is not a personality trait. It's a relationship with yourself that you actively build using 3 key shifts. First, lower the promise. Seriously, stop making these dramatic declarations that your nervous system literally cannot maintain. Do less, but never quit. Second, act before emotion. Don't wait to feel ready. The feeling follows the action, not the other way around. And third, collect evidence. Track your follow-through, not just your end results. You don't lack discipline, you lack proof that you can rely on yourself. By tracking small, kept promises, you build an absolutely undeniable case that you are someone who follows through.
And that leads directly to this incredibly powerful principle. Action creates belief. High achievers don't wait to magically believe in themselves before taking the first step. They behave their way into belief by keeping those small promises to themselves. Every single time you show up for that 25-minute Pomodoro session, every time you choose to do 15 minutes of spaced repetition instead of doom scrolling on your phone, you are casting a vote for your new identity. Self-trust is earned, it's not hoped for. It's built, brick by brick, through action.
Section 3. Escaping the wrong path. Are you climbing the right mountain?
We've spent the first part of this explainer giving you the ultimate blueprint for efficiency, memory, and consistency. But now that you have the tools to walk the path efficiently, what if you're on the wrong path entirely? What happens when you apply this incredible discipline to a goal that isn't even yours? This trap is known as the sunk cost fallacy. It's continuing a behavior based on previously invested time or effort, completely overriding the logical choice to just walk away. Our sources introduce us to someone named Daniel. He's a guy who built a perfectly scripted life based entirely on society's timeline and his parents' expectations. Daniel basically achieved everything, but told his therapist he felt like a guest in his own life. Yet he was absolutely terrified to leave. Why? Because the pain of losing the years he had already invested in this perfect life was totally overriding the logic that it was making him miserable. See, your mind isn't passive. It will send you subtle but completely undeniable signals when you're outsourcing your identity to conform to the expectations of everyone else. There are 4 key misalignment signals to watch out for. Signal 1 is a chronic, low-grade dissatisfaction. It's just a persistent feeling that something is, well, off. Signal 2 is specific envy. This acts as raw data pointing directly to what you actually want but just haven't permitted yourself to pursue. Signal 3 is when you find yourself constantly performing or defending your life choices to others. And Signal 4 is an emotional numbness. It's a quiet disengagement where your passion used to be. That's your inner self literally pulling back its investment. And this brings us to a somewhat brutal but absolutely necessary truth. Staying on the wrong path doesn't honor the time you've already spent. It just adds to the loss. Recognizing that you might be living a scripted life or maybe pursuing a degree or a career just because of the sunk cost, that isn't a failure. Acknowledging you are on the wrong path is actually the courageous first step to aligning your life with your true, authentic self. You aren't weak for staying too long. You're just human. We're wired to protect what we've invested. But remember, you are also wired for alignment.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today. Whose path am I really on? Really think about the goals you're chasing right now with the study and productivity systems we just covered. Are they genuinely yours, or are they borrowed from someone else? Because the very moment you answer this honestly, you can take all these powerful tools, the active recall, the spaced repetition, that unshakable consistency we talked about, and use them to passionately chase a life that actually belongs to you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to go take back a piece of your own story today.